Josh, thank you so much for talking with me today. We just watched your film Haiku Tunnel. Um,
Cool.
I want to open by saying, so I think there are some films that come into our lives by chance. And so when I was growing up as a teenager, my brother, who's 5 years older than me, he had a stack of VHS tapes. And I would
Yeah.
sneak into his room, steal one, sneak to the downstairs TV and watch them, even though I sure would not have been allowed to. And those films included things, and this will tell you what sort of a film lover I grew into was Mike White's Chuck and Buck, the Troma film Surf Nazis Must Die, and your film Haiku Tunnel. So I just want to start by saying thank you for making this movie. It really helped me turn into the film lover I am today.
Oh, that's just beautiful. I mean, and thank you for finding it. I think, because the film really didn't make a huge splash on its release. So when people have found it and have really liked it and dug it and written to me or gotten back to me, I frequently get stories like that. Like I found it, like someone's like, well, I was at Blockbuster and it was misfiled. It was misfiled next to Die Hard. And then I thought, well, what is so I think it sort of has this magical the movie because we made it with a lot of love, and I think it has this magical way of finding its way to magical people such as yourself and such as everyone who has still remained after the screening and did not walk out in the first few minutes, as I hope did not happen.
Yes. So I'd like to go sort of back to the beginning. So right, so before Haiku Tunnel, you're a dramatic monologuist, and so this started as a monologue, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is my second monologue that I did. I had seen this guy Spalding Gray, and I don't know if the students he passed several years ago, so I don't know if they know, but he was this brilliant monologuist. And a friend of mine had brought me to see him do his autobiographical monologues. I didn't know there was such a thing as sort of just one person on stage talking about themselves, but it's not stand up. It's like it's a whole theater piece or whatever. And I thought it was beautiful. And I thought, well, I have no experience with this, but I want to try it. And so this was I did my first monologue, which became this piece called Red Diaper Baby, and then which was about my communist parents and their cool friends. And then this was the second one, which was Haiku Tunnel, and I made it about this really hapless secretary. I was at the time working at that job. I was that incredibly hapless and disorganized and perhaps unethical secretary at the time. And so that was and I was working as a secretary downtown in San Francisco. And then I was going to at first at the Climate Theater and then other theaters in San Francisco, and I was performing my show about being a really bad secretary. And so that's how it started. And so and then it ended up running for a year, and so it was really cool. And then I had a chance. It was optioned to make a film for at the time Miramax, which I don't really want to dwell on too much, but it was optioned, and then the option lapsed, and then at some point, my brother, this is years later, my brother said, we can make a movie. We could do it. We could do it ourselves. My brother Jacob, my little brother. Speaking of brother influences, I'm the one who's like, I'm totally film influenced by my younger brother. So, and so he'd been working just volunteering and being a PA and stuff. And he said, we can do it. And also I'd worked on a script while it was at Miramax and at the Sundance Screenwriters Lab. And so I had this script that I'd been working on where I played me, but there were all these other people playing the other people, and a lot of them are my friends who play them. I mean, if they weren't my friends before, they are now, and we had a blast.
Yeah. So what was it like working with your brother on making this film?
Oh, it's terrible because he lacks talent, and he's also just really just not fun to no. It was beautiful. I mean that's the thing. I guess sometimes people would go, well, with your brother, maybe you could like have some sort of sibling rivalry thing like that. But for one thing, I'm much older than he is. I'm like 13 and a half years older and stuff. So, you know, there's really no reason for him to be a rival with me in any way. But also just we get all of us siblings get along really, really well in our family. And he's just really lovely and like brilliant. And so it was actually just like super fun because it's like he's like one of my best friends, but we also knew it's like you go through the process and there's all these struggles and things where you think, oh, is it going to get into Sundance? Is it going to get picked up? Is it going to get distributed? Whatever. And even just questions of editing as you're going through, you're just working hard and you're struggling, you're getting setbacks. And people are like, well, are you going to squabble about that? And it was the opposite, is that we knew that the other had our back. Like we had each other's back. Like we know that.
Yeah.
That was a given. So no one could like divide us or split us up or anything like that. And so it was an incredibly great experience, and really, really just sort of comforting and joyous, and frequently incredibly funny.
That's great. So how did it get from your brother coming to you and saying, "Hey, let's just make this movie"? Like, how did you get from there to all of a sudden now it's showing 25 years later? Like, what was the production process like? How did you pull it off?
Yeah, so well, like I said, we or I think in my introduction, we had these pizza parties that to raise money, because we ourselves were broke ass, and so and are so but we had friends who had like houses in nicer parts of Berkeley, where I live, Berkeley, California. That's where I'm talking from. And so we had pizza parties, and then people would come, and then we do little scenes with actors reading from the script, and then ask people if they could put in like a little bit of money. And so we raised money that way. And then after we'd done a bunch of pizza parties, we had about like $10,000, which still wasn't enough to make the film. And then this sort of magic person named David came out of the world. It was like, he was someone I knew because he used to come see me work on my shows, including Haiku Tunnel, at this theater called The Marsh in San Francisco. And he at the time was this like scruffy grad student at Stanford in math. And he would just sort of hang out. And I just thought, well, this is a really nice guy. And I hadn't seen him for years and years and years. And then we're doing like what maybe would be our final fundraiser before we give up. And he like walks in, like no one had showed up for the fundraiser. And then like half hour in, he walks in. And then I was like, don't I know you? And he's like, so in the meantime, since I'd last seen him, he'd gone from being this like scruffy math grad student, to being now a scruffy millionaire, tech millionaire, because he had written a program, and then the company had been bought. And so he just said, this was right before the tech bubble burst. And so, and he just said, look, start, raise more money. I'll match it up to 80,000. And, it just became this whole new thing. And, yeah, I even telling you now, I can't believe it, because it was kind of from my brother and I were like at this incredibly low moment, a half hour into what we thought was the failure of the final gasp fundraiser to make the Haiku Tunnel movie. And instead, we were actually in production like a couple months after that.
Incredible. I feel like that's, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my brother, because he had been working in film, I'm a theater guy, he gathered everyone together. And he brought on a friend of his who he'd been working with as an assistant director named Brian Benson, who became our producer, and whose spirit is very much in Haiku Tunnel as well. And yeah, and then we brought in all these people, and we got a lot of help from the theater, not just the film community, but the theater community in the San Francisco Bay Area, because virtually all the actors, including me, in the film are actors from the Bay Area, theater actors from the Bay Area. And so it was a real celebration of like our community.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it feels like that's like so many sort of classic, beautiful, independent cinema stories all jumbled up into one there. Like you have a little bit of everything. You've got the scrappy pizza parties, you've got the old friend coming out of the woodworks who made it big in tech, who's going to be an investor, and then you've got just the community love of just the love of making art together. So that's really beautiful.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that is how a lot of things happen, because I guess apparently some independent filmmakers are just like wealthy, which would have been cool. I would have welcomed that. But
Sure.
My brother and I do not fall into that category, and nor do most of the people that we work with. And so it is this really sort of magical thing, because it's sort of like, I mean, it started from me being, the whole story started from me being a really bad secretary. Like I was a really bad legal secretary who was unable to write novels, which is what I wanted to do originally. And not only was I unable to write novels, but I didn't even mail out the letters that I was supposed to mail out as this. I mean, I was a really bad secretary. And so when you go from there and me sitting in my little cubbyhole and, you know, maybe appropriating free pens once in a while from the office and of course coffee and stuff. But when you go from that, and I was then what, like 30, something like that. So, you know, so it's sort of like I wasn't seen as like at the time as someone who would be a likely success story at that point, you know. But it's like I had my story, and then I told my story first in the monologue of Haiku Tunnel, and all these secretaries came, and also lawyers came too. So it would have been weird if it was just lawyers. That would have freaked me out. But it was a lot of secretaries too. And then, yeah. So and then what happened is around, and then I'd go back to work, you know, because I still worked for another year or two as a secretary until I finally quit my job. And so I was hearing from secretaries as I was first performing the show, and then after the movie came out too, that secretaries were putting up post-its on their, you know, their monitors. It said, "Settle down, focus, catch up," and that was like the thing that they were. And I was like, "Wow, this is like iconic, man. This is, you know, this is beautiful."
That's great. I mean, yeah, they say write what you know, and this was, yeah. So, you know, in the beginning of the movie, you know, you make it a point to say, you know, this movie is totally made up. There is no Bob Shelby, so it would have no reason to sue me. I mean, how much of this did you embellish because it's a very fantastical story. It's very sort of outrageous and over the top. But I mean, how much of this really was your life, and how did you decide when to embellish and when to just tell it like it happened?
Right. So first of all, is this like being monitored by any IU legal people? It just is or is it really just film buffs? Really?
We checked the IDs on the way in, and there are no legal professionals in the audience.
Okay, cool. Well, then I could tell you there's a lot of it is very, very true. Sometimes I even, and that's true, I've done a whole bunch of monologues, autobiographical monologues, including Haiku Tunnel. And a bunch of them, you know, I actually toned things down from what actually happened. So they were actually more outrageous, but they're not believable.
Sure.
I will say that in the monologue of Haiku Tunnel, the thing that my character doesn't do is mail out 85 or so very important letters, right? So that's how I wrote it in the script. But then when we actually went to the set and you piled up 85 unmailed letters, it became sort of absurd, even for an absurd story, like that no one would notice that this guy sitting at his workstation that everyone's walking past hasn't mailed like this pile of letters that, like, you know, is a wall. So I turned it into 17. So it became, so actually, and so the 85 letters in the monologue was already reduced from what I actually did. And then the 17 letters in the movie is reduced from the 85 letters that were in the monologue. But I had, let's see, and then there's a lot of fictional elements too. But I had a boss. His name was Jim, and I changed him into Bob, and and I also didn't tell him I was doing a show about him, you know, until he came to see it. So that was sort of cool, you know. And I told people who was in the audience and stuff, and he was like just super. I mean, he was super kind to me, you know, this guy, but you know, very conservative kind of dude, you know, and yeah, he's this guy who, like, as I talk about in the movie, this really happened. I really did go into him and I said, you know, fire me, I quit. I'm terrible. I told him, I told him that, you know, and he really did say, he said those words. He said, Josh, and so I'm ready to be fired and released from this horror, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, Josh, I think you just have an artistic temperament. Here's what I want you to do. Go back to your desk, settle down, focus, and catch up. He really said that. So, I mean, the most amazing stuff like really happened. And then in terms of like the letters printing out in the wrong printer, and there's some details that I took from other mishaps that I had, or a lawyer allowing a lawyer to mistake me for being an attorney. That actually happened, you know. So it's actually, as I'm going through it, I'm trying to think of anything that I actually made up. But I think you know, no, and then a thing, yeah, and then I tried to mail out the letters and I accidentally just no. So I think I maybe did most of those awful things. And each of the people, the main characters, Marlena Damori, the head secretary, who's played by the wonderful Helen Shoemaker, who herself was working as a secretary at the same time. and Bob Shelby, the character of Bob Shelby, who is portraying the actual. I mean, they're real analogous people to a lot of them, and
Yeah.
the ex-girlfriend and the ex-employee. I did have an ex-employee when I started temping for that job. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's a cool gig, and the whole thing is, that I'm a great temp but a horrible perm. That's the story.
Yeah.
So I'm a great temp, horrible perm, and that sort of actually implies things about me and my life and things like that. And so, but I'm in that great part where I show up and they're so excited that I showed up, because a lot of temps just don't show up, and then I
Yeah.
I can type, and stuff like that, and I don't just randomly curse and things like that. So already, like, you're a star immediately when you come in as a temp like that. And I was like, and free products and things, and supplies and stuff. And then I'm at that job like the first day or the first or second day, and literally I received a call from his previous secretary of the guy I'm working for. He seems really nice, and she's going, he's evil, he's evil, he destroyed my life. I'm like,
Incredible.
you know, yeah, it's sort of weird because I'm sort of thinking I can't take too much credit for this story because like all these really weird things happened to me. But there's some things that there must have been some art involved in it. But a lot of what I do is just me like fucking up and then making stories about it. And the fucking up part, that's the talent I bring. That's the genius that I bring, is that constant ability to fail, and then I tell stories about it, and then people share it, and it's been cool. I mean, it's been great actually.
Well, I think you're being humble. I think your talent is turning it into these wonderful stories and then sharing it with all of us. So thank you. And
Well,
yeah, it
thanks.
is incredible to hear that reality truly is stranger than fiction.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the novelist Richard Price said, God is not a second-rate novelist. It's like
Yeah,
the reality just can't be matched. It can't be
that's
matched, but we
wonderful.
do our best.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so right. I mean, I love this movie, but it's a hard movie to describe in a lot of ways. I tell people that Haiku
And
Tunnel is
apparently to market as
yeah,
well.
yeah. Well, because it really defies description, right? I mean, it would be easy to sell this as an office comedy, but it's not really the same as like Office Space.
No,
Um,
it's different.
it
Office
would
Space
be
is great, but it's
easy
different.
to try to describe this as being based on a dramatic monologue, but I mean, it's very much inspired and in style by the work of Spalding Gray, but it's different. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a movie that's centered around an anxious main character, but it's not really the same as What About Bob? They're very different movies. And
Yeah, no, it's just a different tone. Yeah.
those are all touchstones, but it's really something uniquely of its own. So I guess I was wondering, from your perspective, when you strip back genre, subject matter, style, all of that, like what is Haiku Tunnel? What is the core of this story?
I don't know. To me, it's a story from a drone, from like a meaningless anonymous drone who is like through his neurosis, through his neuroses and his habits, is like having some effect on the world around him. Like he's actually seeking to be not nothing,
Mhm.
and is in danger of remaining and becoming even more of a nothing than the nothing he is. And that to me is, it's an assertion to me of just all of us marginal people, and just of saying, you know, we contain multitudes. We're
Yeah,
we're in, we're interesting. We can do that, and we can really mess with your correspondence if you hire us. So,
right.
but so to me, it's a little bit. It's sort of like that. I think it also, to me, there's some element to me in the story of this idea of how hard it is for some of us to go perm in our lives. I mean, the character, it's not just his job. He won't go permat. He can't. He hasn't gone perm in a relationship, right? So that's and he hasn't gone perm in his career. Like he hasn't, like, he's sort of resisting adulthood in the way that would sort of drive him like into the ground. Like, when the guy says plastics to Dustin Hoffman at the beginning of The Graduate, it's like that's what he's fearing. He's fearing that,
Yeah,
oh, my magical hopes for myself and for the world will end up just being flattened. And so and so the idea is, well, I'm a great temp, but then when I go perm, I like fuck up, and so he's got to get past that, right? And to me, we all have things that we go through many stages where we have to get past things that seem like we can't get past them, right? And then usually with the help of other people, like we do, we often do, but it's so to me it's about like sort of the also about the challenges that maybe many of us have in the large sense of going perm of like I'm accepting that I'm part of this group that I'm part of, and this culture and this society and this lifespan that I'm part of, and that I'm just a little part of that. But if I just, for my character, what happens is if he refuses to go permanent, if he insists on keeping his ties to others cut and remaining totally, temp and totally independent, well, what we see is, he becomes miserable, that he becomes, clinically depressed, because to be permanently temp is a horrible fate. And so he's sort of facing that in his life, I think. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a particular, like, it's such a great thing because in the monologue and in my other monologues and in this movie, I'm able to just follow how my brain works,
Yeah.
Because you're right, it doesn't follow exactly the tone of other movies, other office movies or other comedies. And then also I worked really hard with a lot of great people to also, including my brother, to open it up so that it wasn't just a monologue, like someone talking to you. I do talk to the viewer some, but that it actually be a movie. It's not like a monologue. I hope it's not an illustrated monologue, but in fact, it's a movie that has this guy talking to you a bunch. And so, yeah, I worked hard at it, and a bunch of people worked with me, like really wonderful people. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. And then you saw it, and then, your brother left it out, and apparently had lacked security.
Yep.
As many older brothers do. Speaking as an older brother, and now you've shown it, and people are watching it, and it's 25 years after the movie came out, and it's even longer since the monologue I first did in 1990. So I don't even know how long ago that is. What is this, 26? It's like, I did bad math thing. Is it 56 years? No, can't be, because I'm only 60 something.
36 years.
36. I knew it was something with a 6. Anyhow, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time ago. And yet here it does exist. And that is also, as a theater person who mostly does theater, it's beautiful to me that there's a print that is now can be shown and it still exists. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so 36 years later, 25 years later, what is Josh Kornbluth up to today?
Yeah. Well, Seth, I think, pretty obviously I've become a huge success. And I think, that I think almost should go without saying. But aside from my, great fame and wealth, I'm having a great time. Let's see. Main thing in my life, so I'm just, I know this isn't what you're asking about, but, I've been married for a long time to an amazing woman, and we have a beautiful son, and that's the center of my life. But in terms of work, I am continuing to make new monologues, and done maybe at least 10 of them now, or maybe 12, I don't know. And so I have a new one that I've been working on, and I develop all my monologues on my feet in front of audiences rather than writing them down, which was a challenge because I had to write the screenplay. And so my latest solo show is called What Is to Be Done? Fighting Fascism and Depression. And it's just about that. And I was actually in this really deep depression, as I am prone to be in. And I sort of allude to it with my love for my bed and stuff like that in Haiku Tunnel. But, I'm prone to this chronic depression. And I was going through one last year, and was it 2 years ago, whatever. And then also we're facing the politics that we're facing right now, which are just incredibly painful and horrible. So and so I decided to try to do a show about it. And so I am, and it's been really cool. I've been performing it as you and I are speaking, and as people who are watching this, if you're still there, that I'll be performing this in a week or so in the Bay Area at the Marin Shakespeare Company. I'll be performing as part of this festival that also I've been curating this solo performance festival called One for All at the Marin Shakespeare Festival. So that's one thing, is that monologue, which I'll continue to develop, and I'll tour through, and I'm very available for bar mitzvahs anywhere in and around Bloomington. So I just want to say, it couldn't, cheap. It's really cheap. So, okay. So then the other thing is that I'm making a movie. So in between, I should mention, if you want to see like a dramatic depiction of the making of Haiku Tunnel, it's in a movie. My brother and I made another movie based on another monologue of mine called Love and Taxes. And there's a movie called Love and Taxes, and it's streaming, it's online, whatever. You can see it, and in it, part of the story, I tell part of the story of how I met my wife, but also part of the story is how we made this movie and how it got funded. So that's there in case anyone wants to do follow up. But the movie I'm making now is with this. Do you know Jonathan Lethem, the writer? He
That
wrote
name rings a bell.
Motherless Brooklyn and he wrote Fortress of Solitude.
Okay.
He's a great writer. He sort of mixes all these different elements of sci-fi and detective stories and humor and stuff like that. But I've just been a huge fan of his. And it turns out that since he was a kid, he's been a huge fan of my father's cousin, who is Cyril M. Kornbluth, C.M. Kornbluth, who was a great science fiction writer, wow, who unfortunately died of a heart attack at the age of 34, 1958. And his most famous story is called The Marching Morons. And it takes place in a future that has been in which it is ruled by people who are idiots. And we were going to make the movie like 20 some years ago, but then Idiocracy came out. So like we thought, oh, well, whatever. But then, I got in touch with Jonathan again because I kept thinking about it last year. And so now we're making this movie. Our movie currently is called Morons, a Foray. And I play cousin Cyril, my second cousin, twice removed. I play the late science fiction writer. And what happens to my character of Cyril in our movie is what happens to the main character in the story of The Marching Morons, which is that he goes to the dentist just to get like some common dental thing. They try a new kind of anesthesia on him, and it glitches, and he ends up becoming a zombie. Like he ends up being a state of suspended animation for, in my case, over 60 years, and is just woken up now in 2026, and he's trying to figure out what the hell happened. And wait, I fought fascism. I was in the Battle of the Bulge. Why is there fascism now? And so we are making that movie, and Cyril is going around having encounters with actual people. So it's sort of a mixture of fiction and this sort of quasi-documentary. And then there are all these actual, real, cool people who I have encountered and will be encountering. And so that's another thing I'm doing, is that movie. And I think we'll be done filming by the end of this year.
That's wonderful. Well, those are all really exciting projects. And yeah, so we hope to have you come visit us in person for this screening, just going to sort of get it together. But yeah, hopefully we'll have to have you here live in person in Bloomington sometime in the future. We can do a screening of Love and Taxes. You can perform your new show, and if the film is
like
out,
10 shows, man. I could do a Josh-a-thon, a Josh-a-rama, whatever. But it would be a great pleasure. And even if I don't get out there, just this whole thing that, like how you discovered Haiku Tunnel, and that you're then, able to do a staff selection. And then, the thousands and thousands and thousands of students who have been watching all of this, with rapt attention and delight, it's all really magical and beautiful to me. So thank you.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for your time. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care.